What a game. Your UCF Knights are 3-0 as they beat TCU 35-34 in a game that they probably shouldn't have won, but it doesn't matter. They got the dub. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Charge On. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. BetOnline, the game starts here. It's late. I don't care. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. Did a 4.5 hour live stream. Want to say thank you to everybody who tuned into that. But Nick Geddes is not joining me. Tyler Karen from 96.9 The Game in the Zone joins me. Good friend of mine. Old man Nick, I think, went to bed. I think he was too tired. Shows you his tolerance for some of these games. But he will be giving his thoughts on our episode this week. But Tyler, thank you for pinch hitting. And what a pod to be on. I mean, you kind of, I think you should be thanking Nick. This is the perfect pod to hop on.
Yeah, I mean, Nick's got the wife, he's got the dog, he's got the house. He's a 40-year-old man in a 25-year-old body. But yeah, what a game tonight. The full UCF roller coaster. The O-Town team brought the roller coaster theme park environment to Texas with what we just saw. You saw the highs, you saw the lows. At the end of the day, that scoreboard said 35-34, and the Knights came out on the right side of it.
Now, I'm not holding back. All right, listen. To your credit, or to your point, we're 3-0. UCF is 3-0. It doesn't matter how they got there. It doesn't matter the struggles that they had to do to get there. We're going to talk about it all. I want to get your initial reaction first. I'm going to give my initial reaction. I talked for 4.5 hours, so I think it's best to get somebody else's take on the game, but kind of give your overall thought on the game before we kind of break it down individually.
I think that as a UCF fan, if you cover the team, however you're related to this UCF team, that's the best you have felt about a win since maybe at Tulane a couple of years ago or the Gasparilla Bowl against Florida. Not necessarily with how the team played, but again, just the fact that you won. It flips the script on how bad everyone felt after the Baylor loss last year in the Big 12 home debut to turn it around in years' time and have that 21-point comeback in your Big 12 opener for this season. It's a good feeling. And that's the thing. We'll talk about the negatives as well as the great positives that we saw in this game. But at the end of the day, you feel good to be a UCF Knight right now, and we got there. So, again, the good, the bad, you're happy to be a Knight right now.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you're 3-0. And this was the game that we all had circled as, and I've been saying it, I've said it for 2 weeks, that if UCF wins this game, there's no middle. Now, there was no middle before this game. It was either A, UCF wins and they're going to win the Big 12, or B, they lose and UCF's not going to a bowl game. I said there was no in between. After this game, I think there is. And I think the way UCF played, there is an in between. I think there's a extreme happiness that, let's call it like it is. UCF had no business winning that game. They didn't. They did not deserve to win that game. As much as you're going to hear it from the coaches and players who played an incredible second half, the way they played tonight would get them beat in almost every single week this season. That's a fact. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They executed when they needed to execute. They made the plays when they needed to make the plays. And we're going to get in, you talked about it, we're going to get into the negative. Because, like we've been saying, the first 2 weeks, you don't get anything from this team. You don't get a clue from this team. They can look like the best defense and the best offense in the country, but until they play a real opponent, you're not going to see how they actually are. And I think we saw from both sides of the football, specifically one side, they're maybe not as good as we were hoping they would be. And we're going to get into it, but let's talk offense, Tyler. Let's talk offense first because, boy, the KJ Jefferson haters are going to be going into hiding this week. KJ Jefferson, and we'll get to everybody. I know RJ Harvey, I know Kobe Hudson. But KJ Jefferson has had a lot of negativity surrounding him. He had a really bad year last year at Arkansas. There's a lot that leads into that. Tonight he went 13 of 22 for 230 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, had a quarterback rating of 191.9, and ran 9 times for 46 yards. Tyler, it just felt like, especially on that last drive. Now, granted, it was really the Kobe Hudson, KJ Jefferson show when it came to throwing it. I mean, KJ was looking for Kobe whenever it was a pass. I don't think and this is no disrespect to JRP. As you know, as people watch the show, I am a JRP try to support. You know, I try to find the positives of JRP. If you flip-flop these two quarterbacks and you put JRP in this game, UCF loses that game by 2 touchdowns. KJ Jefferson makes the throws and puts them on the money and doesn't put the ball in danger. He didn't tonight, and he could very well in the coming weeks. But talk about KJ's performance. I think that just shows you the portal taketh, the portal giveth. You cannot hit in the portal. Look at FSU. I think UCF hit on a quarterback in the portal.
Yeah, I think so. There were times tonight, and as far as the JRP comparison, I think that Plumlee maybe had a higher ceiling than what KJ did, but with that reward came some major risk when trying to extend those plays and make something out of potentially nothing. That's not necessarily what you're getting with KJ. He's making the smart plays, the ability at one point in the game, and this goes along with the roller coaster, when UCF is down 28-7 and the offense is stagnant, it's demoralizing defensively. And I thought to myself, KJ looks bulky. He looks bulky rushing the ball. That's a positive thing. That's something you want from your quarterback of that frame. Then he looks bulky throwing the ball. That in the first half where Kobe Hudson is open on that slant over the middle inside the 10-yard line, he throws it at his feet. He was throwing the ball like he wasn't comfortable. And then at times he was thinking like he was a bulky dude, that he should have been on the offensive line. So the KJ in the first half, that's where, there was thoughts of, do we see a Jakari Brown sighting in this game? It's unlikely, but just to try to spark and ignite something into this offense, because outside of RJ, it wasn't there. KJ showed that he is mature enough and he's experienced enough to separate the good and the bad, to put the first half to the side and say, we have a 3-score hole right now. We can continue to dig it or we can try to climb out. And that second half that he had was really special. I credit Gus Malzahn for changing the game plan and letting it come to him, using RJ strategically instead of just constant ground and pound, having the confidence in KJ to find Kobe as many times as he did, and for Kobe to give him the opportunity to be the best receiver on this team and one of the best in the Big 12 that he is. So I credit KJ, all the offensive guys, Gus. But yeah, KJ, he didn't make any mistakes tonight. Outside of some bad throws, I think he was still looking in the right spots. Just the performance wasn't always there, but he didn't make the mistakes and didn't leave the window open for TCU to completely run away with this one.
No, you talked about some of the throws that KJ was throwing in, and though there was a couple, I know the throw about that you're talking about with Kobe, that was he had a touchdown if you throw it good. But I think what KJ was doing is there were some times where you could see he was looking down the field, but he didn't force anything. I think if he thought that there was a potential for a ball to get picked or a potential to put a ball in a bad situation, he just got out of it. He didn't want to put the ball in harm's way, and that's a big difference than what we've seen, because there were games where, West Virginia, 4 interceptions by John Rice, and this isn't a hate on John Rice pod. Like, KJ has a long way to go. He's had 2 good games, 1 bad game. You can get whatever you get any type of week. But I think what was so good about KJ is he pulled the ball when he needed to, right? He didn't just hand it off to the running back every time. He pulled it when he needed. He would hand it off when he needed to. When he saw the hole for the running back, he would hand it off. And then the balls that he was throwing, especially the ones to Kobe, he didn't put it in a position where it could get picked off. It was only where it was a 50-50 for Kobe. In the slant routes, the slants where he would hit Kobe on a slant or, hit Randy Pittman on a dump off, it was just accurate. And it was hard to defend. And Gus gave credit to number 13, the corner for TCU after the game, saying that's a really good corner. He was not. That was not a good corner. And if he was, Kobe just made him look really bad. But credit to KJ Jefferson. If KJ Jefferson is not the quarterback, I don't know who the quarterback would be. I think he managed the game perfectly, and he is a huge, huge reason why you are sitting at 3-0 tonight. Or give your final thought on KJ.
Yeah, KJ doesn't need to throw for 300 yards. This doesn't have to be a Mackenzie Milton, Dylan Gabriel type of offense where you need to put up a ton of yards through the air. Watching that, now this is a stretch, but work with me here. Watching the Buffalo Bills this season and in the second half of last season, I find myself thinking, KJ can just be the Josh Allen of new, where Josh Allen used to throw for 400 yards a game. That's not the game plan anymore. It's more of a ground attack with Josh Allen included, and he's turned into one of the best game managers, one of the most talented game managers that you can have. This rushing attack is so good that, like we said in that second half tonight, in all game, KJ didn't make mistakes with his head. A bad pass here and there, but he was putting the ball in the right spots and not putting the ball in harm's way. If KJ can continue that, I think that's the best version of this UCF team. He doesn't need to be that electrifying quarterback week in, week out.
And to end on the point, he made bad passes, but I think the bad passes that he made, the one at the feet to Kobe, the overthrow, I forgot who the receiver was, it might have been Kobe. I think those were intentional bad throws because he didn't want, the one where he overthrew, I think it was Kobe, it might have been Randy, but it was on a slant. He overthrew it by a lot. And I think they ran the same back-to-back play. I think it was a quick slant or a deep slant by Kobe. I think he intentionally overthrew it. There was two guys there. They played it well, and I think he lofted it way higher so that it wouldn't be a pick. The one at the feet to Kobe, the receiver or the corner was kind of grabbing him. He's like, okay, I'm just going to throw this at his feet. It was a bad throw, but I think in his mind intentionally, he's like, I'm not going to be the one to lose us this game. If the defense is going to allow 60 points, fine. But I'm not going to throw an interception in a really dire position to give them more opportunities. So credit to KJ, played incredible tonight. And again, to your point, I think, and I know we're spending a lot of time on KJ, but I think he deserves it. TCU in the first half had a perfect game plan, in my opinion. They weren't nervous about KJ running the ball. And I think you should. You need to watch out for that. They didn't want KJ giving the ball to RJ Harvey. They didn't want KJ giving the ball to the skill position players. They were basically saying, we're going to make sure we have our eyes set on the running back every single time, and if KJ pulls it, KJ pulls it. We'll tackle him, but he's not going to go and run for 70 yards. So I think TCU's credit, if I'm an opposing coach and I'm going to play UCF, that should be your game plan, and I'm sure teams will do that, where it's have your P's and Q's on where the running back, where Xavier Townsend is, and if KJ wants to pull it and run for 5 yards, let him. But he's making the right decisions, and that's really all we can ask for. But let's move on to the running backs, Tyler, because not just any running back, RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey, you got the heavy dose of RJ Harvey tonight, and he just had, again, if you don't think RJ Harvey is a top 3 back in the country, I know, I get it, there's a lot of running backs in college football. What he's doing this season specifically and what he's been doing is special. 29 carries, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. He also had the one reception for 29 yards in the touchdown through the air, which got UCF on the board. Listen, there was a lot of times, Tyler, where there was not, people want to crap on TCU's run defense. There were some times where there were some big gaping holes from TCU. But some other times, he's just shifting inside in the numbers, trying to get as many yards as possible. There were sometimes he made a 6-yard run, basically look like a 20-yard, because he's bouncing left and right, just trying to find the different holes and navigating. I think, and again, we can only say so many nice things about RJ Harvey, but RJ Harvey, for UCF to get to where they want to go to, is going to have a game like this almost every single Saturday. But what did you think about RJ and his performance today? Yeah,
he's unbelievable. I think RJ is the backbone of this team. the rushing attack is the most important element of UCF's offense this season, and he is the head of the snake in that regard. And credit to Penny and Miles. Not a ton of work from Johnny tonight, but just credit that whole room that they're taking the weight of that and quite literally running with it. And RJ, this guy is a gem. I think all UCF fans were slightly concerned after the season he had last year and the transfer portal being as active as it is. If RJ Harvey is playing for Georgia right now, he is undoubtedly the best running back in the country. He's not. He's at UCF, and, think what you will about UCF and from a national lens. RJ, I think right now he is the best back in the Big 12, undeniably, with Ollie Gordon off to the slow start. And again, he doesn't have to go for 180 every single night like he did, but just the impact that he makes, it goes beyond the stats. You talk about the KJ's opportunities to run. A lot of that comes from the defense having to be honest when it comes to RJ. So the impact that he has on this team, the impact that he had on the game tonight, even though it was more of a pass attack to get back into the game, you can't give enough credit to RJ Harvey.
No, and we kind of had our questions answered as to a big question I had going into this game was, okay, are we going to basically see the full running back attack? All right, are we going to see kind of even carries? Obviously, RJ was going to get more of the bulk, but how evenly matched was it going to be? And it wasn't. RJ had 29 carries. Penny Boone had 7, which I thought we would see a lot more Penny Boone, but I think that also was because Miles got a little banged up in the first half. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Miles did come in in the second half, so he should be okay. But Tyler, Johnny Richardson, and we're not going to spend, I just wanted to mention this because you mentioned Johnny. He did have that big first down. I called it on the live watch along. I said, I saw Johnny in motion. I said, this would be a perfect time to get a touch for Johnny. And great play call by Gus Malzahn. Got the first down on a big down 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, and it kept the chains moving. So UCF's going to need to use every running back. They use them tonight. Let's talk about some of these receivers because KJ was throwing it to a bunch of guys. You had Randy Pittman have 3 for 43. That was basically it in terms of anybody besides Kobe Hudson. Xavier Townsend had 2 carries for -2 yards. Obviously, it's a lot of the jet sweeps and stuff. RJ had the 1 reception. Jacoby Jones had a big-time reception. But Kobe Hudson, Tyler, 6 catches, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns on 11 targets. Got the game-winning touchdown. KJ went to him very often, early and often. Took a big hit in the end zone and still caught the ball. This is a big year for Kobe. Big year. There were some rumblings that maybe, stuff in the fall camp wasn't working as well with Kobe and KJ. And I think that has been absolved very quickly. In the first 3 weeks, they've hit one 50-50 play in every single game. And in this game, KJ's like, I'm going to have to throw it. Okay, I'm throwing it to Kobe Hudson every single time. You don't want to be one-dimensional in terms of, okay, when we run, we're just going to RJ. And when we throw, we're just going to Kobe. You want to get it to other guys, Randy Pittman specifically getting involved, Xavier Townsend. But to see Kobe Hudson, who has had issues with drops last season and is a big-time receiver, but still, for him to come up this big in this big of a game and to make all of the catches, like, how incredible has it been to see him this season, but specifically in this game?
Yeah, Kobe goes from being the number 2 behind Javon Baker and a great number 2 to being, listen, you're going to need to be the guy. If UCF is going to reach the goals, reach the win total that they want, Kobe is going to have to be the guy for this team and compete against the best corners in the Big 12 because he is going to draw the matchup and the attentions, and he's going to have to win those one-on-one 50-50 battles. And tonight, that's exactly what Kobe did. He was on the walk-off interview for the radio call tonight, and you could tell he's just speechless. He turned 23 earlier this week, so a special game for him during a special time. That was one of the greatest things, I think, tonight was you saw the growth of KJ to Kobe. In the first half, there were times where it just seemed like the chemistry, the flow was off. It was the reports that we heard coming out of fall camp. And you just saw that switch go where, again, it's KJ showing the trust that he has in Kobe and the trust that Gus has in Kobe to get him all those 50-50 balls and to get him those looks. Again, Kobe just, he's probably the most important player tonight. He's the most clutch player tonight. That's probably the better word for it. The 2 touchdowns were major. And again, so he's winning those 50-50 battles right now, and that's something you want to see all through Big 12 play.
And he could have had more. I mean, on the second play, KJ missed him on a deep ball on one in like the third or fourth quarter. He just threw it a little high in the end zone. So I think if I'm a team playing UCF, that's going to be the guy you need to shut down. And we knew that going into the season, but he's proving it. So UCF offense does their job in the second half. If I can get it up, they scored 13 in the third quarter, 15 in the fourth. You were kind of mentioning it. The offense was a little stagnant in the first half. They, at the end of the second quarter, that was coaching. That wasn't on the players. I think we're going to get into negatives because there's a lot of negatives. I mean, we'll talk about the negatives on the offense. There's only really a couple. And I'm trying to think of them on the fly. End of the second quarter, the handling by Gus Malzahn was awful. There has been times in the last couple of years where that is an issue. Texas Tech is another game where you thought, what's going on with the game management? And Gus admitted to it in his post-game press conference, saying, like, yep, that's on me, that's not on them. Didn't even come away with points there. Special teams, that's a whole hour-long pod of what's going on there. But, I mean, listen, you didn't come away with points at the end of the half. I think the substitutions need to get cleaned up. Gus mentioned that as well. They were substituting almost every single play, and when you're trying to play fast, like, listen, I'm no football expert, but I know if I'm trying to play fast, if you are substituting every single play to get in the right, formation and get the right guys in for certain run plays or what have you, if I'm TCU, I'm going to try and take up as much time as humanly possible getting my substitutions on the field. So, like, Gus was complaining, and he mentioned, like, it's his fault. That's something that needs to get cleaned up, Tyler, because in the weeks leading up, I've said there is a blueprint to beat UCF. Win the time of possession battle, get up early, and take off as much time as humanly possible when you're playing them on defense. Get stopped. So TCU has the blueprint. They played it pretty well, but Gus needs to make sure he cleans that up on offense.
Yeah, addressing the end of the first half there where UCF ended up coming away with no points, where that was a major swing, and TCU came out blazing in the third quarter and scored right off the bat. And you're thinking, there's that 14-point swing right there from going into halftime down a touchdown to not getting any points, then TCU getting up the 2 or 3 scores. In that situation, you want in any sport as a coach to make sure your team has the most control as possible over the things that they can control. TCU was taking their time subbing the entire night. That is something that you can get a delay of game. There can be yards tacked on for that, but it's rare. You don't see it very often. That's a luxury that the defense does have. If the offense is subbing, you can utilize that strategically and utilize to get take the time off. If you're Gus in that situation, you have to be aware, because it wasn't the first time TCU did it in the game. They were doing it all night in the first and second quarter. So when you're inside the 10, you're attacking, the clock is dwindling down, you have one timeout left. Those are things that you have to be aware of. If UCF loses this game tonight, that's one of the spots that you point to, is to say, if that field goal at the end of the night goes in and UCF loses 37-35, you think to that spot, that is unacceptable from Gus Malzahn and with that game plan and that subbing.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of things that if they would have made the field goal at the end, there's 7 points that I said we're going to get to talk about with special teams. You left 7 points on the field. 7 points. Full-on touchdown. That you could have made this game an easy breeze. But nope. The Cardiac Knights come out and listen, the offense was the least of our problems tonight. Spent 25 minutes talking about the offense. I'm going to try and keep the defensive talk to a reasonable time, guys. Because let's call it like it is. It was abysmal. And Positive Sean's gone. Positive Sean from last year, he died, I think, after the bowl game. Negative Nancy Sean has been kind of here every week. I'll start with the positive, and then I want to get Tyler's take. Positive, you had a really good second half. And by second half, you had a good last 25 minutes because you came out in the second half. Tyler, you mentioned it. They put up a touchdown to go up 28-7. I mean, we were down 21 points at the beginning of the third quarter. And yeah, the offense missed opportunities, right? They had 2 missed field goals. Could have been 13-28 or whatever it was. But you missed your opportunities. But then the defense turned it on. Now, here's my issue. And I really want to get your take, because again, I watched the game by myself. I had a bunch of UCF fans watching the live watch along with me, but the Ted Roof defense, I was expecting a lot more blitzing. They didn't blitz a lot tonight. Couldn't get pressure with 4-man. They would get pressure after about 4 to 5 seconds. And by that time, a quarterback like Josh Hoover is finding his 5-yard receiver in a flat route or a curl. And they was just playing dink and dunk the entire night. And they didn't really make the changes until midway through the third. They tried to make the change at the beginning of the second half, but Josh Hoover beat them deep. They were setting up a deep ball the entire night by just throwing the short passes. They got the defense. So I was kind of frustrated, and I am kind of nervous moving forward, because I did say last week, and Steven Leonard and Nick Geddes laughed in my face. It's probably why Nick Geddes is not on this pod tonight, because he didn't want me to tell him I told you so. But I said I saw a couple things in the first 2 weeks that made it seem like the pass defense could be a little leaky, that it seemed like maybe it wasn't 100%, and it wasn't even the end of the games. It was the beginning of the games where the starter was in and our starting defense was in. I'm like, this looks a little leaky. Boy, Tyler, does this defense look leaky when it comes passing the football. And some people in the comments were saying, oh, well, at least our run defense is good. I'm like, we actually don't know that, because TCU's run offense is just really bad. So we actually have no idea if our run defense is any good. We did hold them to 17 carries for 58 yards. But again, it's the tale of two teams. They ran it 17 times. We threw it for 22. But we also rushed it for 54, and they threw it for 52. So it's the tale of two teams. They couldn't run the ball, but they damn sure could throw it. So yeah, their passing defense, little nervous moving forward. But kind of give your overall takes on the defense as a whole tonight. But again, with the positive being, they did what they needed to do in the second half. Give them their flowers. Give credit where credit is due. Without their performance in that back half of the third quarter and entire fourth quarter, UCF doesn't win this game, and that's just plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in this spell before where it's week 3 and you've gotten a couple of cupcakes, one big-time victory, and you're heading into week 4 thinking UCF's defense is legit. And then you get into the conference play and whatnot, and it's, oh no, this defense has its holes, it has its issues. One of the concerns tonight, so yeah, we've talked about the bend, don't break mentality that UCF defense has had, where they're going to give you those short routes, but they don't want you to beat them over the top. They'll let you march down the field, and you try to stay strong in the red zone. And they've been successful with that in years past. Tonight, Ted Roof, intentionally, unintentionally, he wasn't playing either of those games. It was TCU was able to draw that defense in. It was a cat and mouse game. It was, you are going to adjust, or we're going to keep doing this. And then when Roof did adjust, that's when TCU was able to capitalize and find Besh for 200 yards tonight. So credit to them for getting it done. I'm really concerned because I think you're right. We don't know what this rush defense is going to look like. And I think it's part of the reason that Ricky and Lee Hunter haven't been major game changers, because I think that's where you're not going to get anything up the middle with those guys. When they've been healthy, you've seen the best version of the run defense for UCF. You have to get more pressure in the pocket. I mean, tonight there was hardly any. We talked about Hoover and his ability to extend plays. He doesn't want to run the ball, but he's able to buy some extra time to find some open receivers. He didn't really even have to do that tonight. He was straight Peyton Manning, Ben Roethlisberger. I'm not leaving this pocket. I'm going to sit right here and I'm going to find my guy. And that comes down to the outside rush. That's not exactly Ricky and Lee's games to a T. Deshaun Pace, that guy's a dog. I mean, we know he's a utility man. You can play him just about anywhere, and he's probably the best at that position on this UCF team. But if you're not sending Pace, then you need those edge rushers to get more pressure in the pocket. You don't need to get the sacks, but just the pressure needs to increase, or else there's going to be a lot of high-scoring ball games. You can only ask the secondary to do so much if you're not getting pressure on these Big 12 quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you mentioned it. You mentioned early about how it was a cat and mouse, and Ted Roof, switched it up and then they beat him deep. But I will give Ted Roof credit, and I'll give the defense credit. TCU was kind of a one-trick pony. They had one way of beating UCF, and when UCF started to stop that one-trick pony, TCU couldn't figure it out. They made good plays, but anything 10 yards or more down the field, it was few and far between. That's why there was a bunch of frustration watching the game, because you're looking at it and saying, okay, all they're doing is throwing these 10 yard or 9 yards or less type of passes. It's either going to be a flat or a curl route. It's going to be one of those two. And it's going to be an RPO where, they might give it to the running back, but really they're going to throw it to the flat. So it was frustrating because sometimes, again, it felt like the Addison Williams defense were, I think Brandon Adams was pressing, but then McWilliams and Arnold are, 10 yards back. And it's like, what are we doing? Like, do you not trust the press? Just press the receivers, because then you're right on them. If you're giving them 5 yards every time, they're going to get a first down. So they cleaned it up late in the third quarter, where they basically just shifted everybody 10 yards up and said, beat us. The pressure, though, you brought it up. Ted Roof likes to say, sacks don't tell the whole story, right? Like, sacks don't tell a whole story. And that's valid. Sacks don't tell a whole story. I think UCF had gotten a lot of pressure the last couple weeks. It just didn't result in sacks. This week, they didn't get a lot of pressure. Now, they did. It would just take 5 seconds for them to get pressure. And by that time, even if Hoover held it for 5 seconds, he still got a wide open guy right there. So, do I think Ethan Barr could have played better in the middle? There were a couple balls that Ethan Barr could have picked off, knocked down, that Hoover just fit it through a window. It is concerning. Malachi Lawrence, he was good early, then what became non-existent. Nigel Kelly, non-existent. You mentioned Deshaun Pace. I want to give him his flowers. He came up with two huge tackles on that last defensive play, where second down, he came up with the tackle where he kept it second and 10 or third and 10, then made the next one. So without Deshaun Pace, you're not sitting here with a UCF win. He had 11 total tackles, 8 solo, so did most of it by himself. He had a tackle for loss. But I'm intrigued to look at the pressures. I see just off of the stats, we have Ladarius Tennyson had a QB hit, which I think you remember that play. You remember when they sent the safety blitz where Tennyson kind of got a hit on Hoover. That was a great call. I think they called that at a perfect time. Then the other QB hit was Ethan Barr. I can't remember when he got a QB hit on him. Malachi Lawrence got one, but they got 3 QB hits, 1 tackle for loss the entire game, and then 4 pass breakups, which, the way they were throwing it, I expect you to get a lot of pass breakups. But besides that, Tyler, what's the biggest concern? For me, specifically, it is the pass defense. And again, you played a good quarterback in Josh Hoover, we get it. But there are some signs that are kind of starting to tell us that this UCF defense, and again, they have 2 weeks to work on it, that this UCF defense isn't going to get you a lot of pressure, isn't going to get a lot of sacks, and can get very leaky when it comes to pass defense. But, are we over-exaggerating that, being it's only week 3?
No, I don't think so, because the pressure in the first couple of weeks, I think it was okay, but against the quality of opponent that you were lined up against, it probably should have been better. And Ted Roof has a point when sacks don't tell the whole story. You're right. Getting a pressure and having a quarterback throw a stray ball just to get rid of it, and on a third down and ends up having to punt it, who cares if you got the sack, you're getting the ball back. But again, it's how comfortable. There's such a huge jump, and we know this, especially in the trenches. I think that was one of the spots last year where you could tell UCF was a new team in the Big 12. In the trenches, especially once injuries came into play, they looked beat on both sides. The offensive line wasn't great. The defensive line wasn't great. And that jump. That gap has closed. I think UCF has caught up. And again, it helps to have Ricky and Lee both healthy. But this is what you are facing the rest of the year. There is no more Sam Houston. There is no more New Hampshire.
Maybe Florida. Florida's like Sam Houston.
Well, yeah, we'll see with Florida. Colorado might be the caliber of Sam Houston. But again, this is what you are going to see. And they're going to be better O-lines than what you saw tonight. So the damage that they were able to do for the air, the protection that TCU's O-line was able to get Hoover for him to make all those throws, it's certainly concerning. I think that, again, we'll see with the rush defense. I'm less concerned with the secondary and some mental lapses perhaps, and maybe I think that's something you can learn from and what Ted Roof can learn from tonight. But pressure is pressure. And if it isn't there on the quarterback, that's not something you just scheme out of necessarily.
Well, it's funny because they didn't mention in the first 2 weeks, it's like, oh, sacks don't tell the full story, and we just mentioned that. Yet in Gus's post-game presser, I think it's getting to the point where he's like, this is an issue. Because he's like, yeah, we didn't get any sacks tonight. So it's definitely becoming a concern. They're not getting any pressure. I said it. I expected Ted Roof to blitz more. But the one where I was really annoyed was the 3rd and 10 on TCU's 15, where it's like, okay, we're going to blitz everybody. And it's like, okay, like, I get it. You're having PTSD because they're getting every single 3rd down conversion. I get it. But why are we blitzing on our 15-yard line? Just play your guys in the back. Like, and again, it's not working, but I don't know. Ted Roof was very interesting tonight on many calls. But let's talk not red zone. Let's talk about 3rd down conversions. I know this is a very fun topic to talk about, is 3rd down conversions. I don't think I've ever seen, and maybe I just don't watch like Georgia beat up on an FCS school. I don't think I've seen as many 3rd and 10s get completed. Like they were 9 for 10 on 3rd down at one point.
Yeah.
And I was watching the game and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. Do you blame that more on the defensive line? I get it. You're not trying to put as much on the corners. And again, if it's taking 5 seconds for a play to develop, sure. I think it's a coupling. I think the defensive line needs to put pressure to stop. Like, there's no excuse. There cannot be that many 3rd and longs that you're converting. No team in the country should be 9 for 10 on 3rd downs. 90%. That's why I'm shocked UCF ultimately won this game. Every single stat you're looking at says there's no way UCF should win this game with allowing TCU to go 9 for 10 on 3rd down.
Yeah, and to that point, that's where we saw adjustments on both sides of the ball, and from first half to second half, and that was one of the things for the defense. They started TCU was 9 of 10 on 3rd down conversions. I think at one point it ended up being they were 10 of 14, 15. So, you saw that switch. And again, you mentioned the Deshaun Pace tackles on the most crucial defensive stop. That's where he comes up big. But it looked at times that it was JV versus varsity. It was just we're bigger, we're faster, we're better, we're smarter. I think there were times that TCU's coaching staff was coaching loops around UCF's coaching staff, especially when the offense and defense with UCF on defense. So I think that you got better, but again, you're not going to be able to do this week in and week out. It's to be able to overcome a 21-point deficit like you did here tonight. You have to be on your P's and Q's earlier and more consistently in the game. So certainly a concern, but it's still promising that you saw those in-game adjustments for them to slow it down. And the fact that Savion Williams, he had the 2 touchdown catches in the first half. He was the guy for hooks, for slants against Stanford a couple weeks ago. That was his bread and butter. He finishes, I don't know if he had a catch in the second half. So those are the type of adjustments that are promising.
No, and they definitely made adjustments. You mentioned it, 10 for 15 on 3rd downs to end the game. They were incredible in that second half. I think UCF as a team in general was just better all around. And in the first half, yeah, TCU their coaching staff was coaching circles around UCF. There's no question. They were doing whatever they wanted. But in the second half specifically, it does give you hope. I don't want to be all negative Nancy for the defense. I want to make it clear, without the defense making the 2 stops at the end of the game, UCF loses this game. I mean, UCF gave the ball back. The defense made a stop. UCF had to get the ball back because they didn't move the ball quick enough, and they punted it back with, I think, like 4 minutes or something, and the defense came up with a huge stop. Deshaun Pace came up with a huge stop. So there are glimpses, Tyler, and that's why I want to be negative, because they did play an awful game. But the positive is you saw the glimpses in the second half of, okay, this could be a good defense if they make the right adjustments. If they can do certain things well, this could be a good defense. But if this is the type of defense we play, where you can't garner pressure, Shedeur Sanders, forget about beating Colorado. I don't care how bad Colorado is. When you play a quarterback that can light you up through the air, forget about it. If you don't get pressure, forget about it. Your corners, though I don't think the corners were that impressive tonight. I think there was a couple times again where you're just like shaking your head like, what are we doing? I agree with your point. If there's not going to get pressure on the quarterback, you've already lost the game. And you're not going to play teams like, credit to the defensive line for stopping the run. They did an incredible job stopping the run. Let's see what happens when we play a team that wants to run the football. And you're not going to see that for a little bit. You're not going to see that probably until Cincinnati. Like, once you play Cincinnati, you'll get Kiner for 30 carries a game, and then we'll see how good the run defense is. But for right now, over the next month, you're going to get a bunch of throwing the football. So how are you going to respond? But that's our defensive talk. And luckily, it was only about 10 minutes, because I don't know if I could talk, or 20 minutes still. Yeah, that was rough. Let's talk quickly about the big elephant in the room, the reason UCF didn't have 7 points on the board. 2 missed field goals and an extra point. Special teams, we were all looking really happy the last 2 weeks. We're like, oh, special teams, it was a negative last year. It's going to be a positive. Xavier Townsend in the punt game is ridiculous. Well, TCU barely punted, and when they did, fair catch every time. But Colton Boomer, I have to watch the tape back. I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched back the kicks. I don't see what happened. Somebody in my live stream, Stephen Leonard, I guess, said the first one was on Colton. The second one was on Evan Morris, which I watched that. The second one was 100% on Evan Morris. I guess the third one, the missed extra point, was on both. Was on Colton and just the entire unit. I've never felt so good about having a bye week right now, because I think we were all saying Colton's back, that we should have no fears about this. And again, the first one was a 47-yarder. It was way too low. I mean, that was going to get blocked easily. But there is some, you cannot, if you go into every game and say 7 points are going to get taken off the board because our field goal unit is going to screw up, you're going to lose a lot of football games. And UCF tonight, they shouldn't have won. They did, because they played better. They played better in the second half. But if we would have lost, Tyler, it would go to, you put 7 points, or 7 points did not go up on the board because of silly mistakes that you made last year as well. So kind of talk about the unit, and what do you want to see out of Brian Blackman's unit this next week to try and clean some stuff up?
Yeah, that's how I saw those 3 misses as well. The first one's just a line drive from Colton, and that's getting blocked in a Pee Wee football game. I don't even know if that had the chance to make it over the post. So that one's on Colton. The other 2 were that right side blocking was just non-existent. I mean, those rushers had a reservation right next to McCarthy, who's holding the ball. And major issue, that's something I think, blocking on special teams, I think that's something that can get cleaned up. I don't think you can be that bad again, blocking for extra points and for field goals. However, you can miss 3 kicks in a game. That's a much more likely situation. And we have seen great things from Colton Boomer. He has won us ball games over the last couple of years. We've also seen him lose some ball games over the last couple of years. And he's talked about the mental side of things, because kicking is a very mental thing in the game of football, and the confidence. And, he's a year older, a year more experienced, I think a year more comfortable. That is more of the concern. And not to put all this pressure on Colton Boomer, but I'm wearing the kid's jersey right now. But That's more of the concern. I think the blocking gets fixed. It's just this week, this off week, whatever you need to do, whatever puts Colton Boomer in his happy place, that's what you need to do. He needs to have the confidence, the swagger to be this little golden boy that's going to be automatic.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's massive. I don't even want to know what the thought process would be if we lost this game. Because I was saying on our live watch along that it felt like Texas Tech 2.0, where you felt like UCF could win the game if you just executed on those late, field goals. I mean, he missed the field goal. I think it was the field goal or the extra point at the end of the second half of that game, and then missed the kick late. It's like, every point in college football matters. You see it every week, and this week was no exception. Like, you needed a touchdown with 30 seconds left to win the game, when realistically, you struggled on offense. Like, you were moving the ball, but you struggled to just get it in the end zone, right? You put up 7 at the end of the first half. Those 2 field goals, that's 13 points. And I get I was saying it's girl math for sports fans. It's like we look at it from hey, 7 points, it could have been 42-34, which it's like, that's how you do every game win or loss. But at the end of the day, those points, even though you were playing terrible, it makes the game look a lot different. And credit to the players for not getting down on themselves, because I said, look, if you just look at the stats, UCF can still win this game if they just get one stop on third down. Like, it's not like the defense is playing bad. They're getting stops on first and second down. They just can't get a stop on third down. So you looked at it from you have a really good chance here to make some noise. But when the special teams unit is not living up to their end of the bargain, that's when you look at it and you say, okay, the positive from this game is you won, and also positive is you have so much to clean up, and you have a bye week to do it. So it's like, I have trust in Colton. I do. I'm sure a lot of UCF fans are going to be out on Colton Boomer. I saw it in my comment section, even though a good chunk of it wasn't his fault. It needs to get cleaned up. And I'm sure that is going to be priority number 1, is we can't leave 7 points on the board every week if we want to win in the Big 12. There are going to be a lot of tight games.
Yeah, you can't. The miscues just can't happen, and that's the interesting thing about this game. And we've seen it in games in the past where UCF won the total yards battle of 519 to 460, and they were down 21 points, and they still had 40, 50, 60 more yards than TCU. The offense was moving. It was almost like you didn't believe it, and I think that the rushing attack is responsible for this. Where there's so many 11-yard pickups by RJ Harvey that the yards just kind of start to blend together. And then you look up and you're surprised to see that you're winning the total yards battle. But you combine that with the fact that you left 7 points on the board, and it's like, what are we worried about? I mean, UCF should have won this game by a touchdown and whatnot. So Colton, though, or special teams and missing those kicks, it's like in basketball when you lose a game by 3-4 points, and you look up and you see that you had 8 missed free throws on the night, and that's oftentimes where you look to.
That's
and
boy
you say,
math.
well,
That's boy math right there.
You knock down a couple more of those free throws. I mean, we've both been on Magic broadcast. We both said it. That's been something that has been a go-to in the post game. Is, well, you miss 11 free throws and that's your ball game. That comes down to special teams. Missing field goals is bad enough, but extra points, that's where that goes to a whole different level. So again, the blocking, I think there's no way that you see a performance that bad from the outside blocking. And then it's just getting Colton focused in and, again, getting that confidence ready over the next couple of weeks.
Listen, I'd be shocked if that happens again. I'm sure they're going to rep it more than anything they do for the next 2 weeks. At the end of the day, it is disappointing that it takes something like this. Like, it should have already been corrected. It shouldn't have come to a game like this where this happens and it's like, well, we need to fix it. It's like, you should have had the group ready tonight. But that's just me being negative. I get it. We won the game. UCF won. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme, but if they lost, that would be what we talked about, is you left 7 points on the board. I remember, because that's all we talked about last season, where oh, well, how many points did we leave on the board this week? So it's different. It's a different vibe, different energy. UCF would have lost this game last year. There's no question about it. UCF would have lost this game last year, especially down 31-13, 28-7. At that point, you're just trying to get out of there healthy. I mean, that's the honest truth. But Tyler, give me your final thoughts. Again, huge win for UCF. Start the season 3-0 against a really tough TCU team. And now you get a bye week. But give your final thoughts on this game and what you'd like to see from the Knights moving forward.
Yeah, I give credit. I think adaptability is a huge word for tonight when it comes to the coaching staff. For Gus, that one possession, I don't remember what it put the lead at, but it was the 2 or 3 play drive where, it was the long pass, a couple of long passes to Kobe for a score, when that's not necessarily what UCF is trying to do in their perfect world. They want that ground attack to be more involved. Gus adjusted to the game and said, this is what we need. If we have any shot of getting back, this is how we're going to do it. Even if it's a little uncomfortable, they went to it. Defensively, again, we talked about the mess in the first half and the cat and mouse game with TCU. The defense was able to adjust slightly in the second half, and whether they did anything or not, Savion Williams again became a non-factor, and the third down conversions was a very, very different story. And then with the players, that one took guts. That one took a lot of guts for UCF to get on that plane tonight and come home with a smile on their face in a 3-0 season. So I think that you look at the negative, you have to evaluate both sides, the positives and the negatives. I think there's certainly a lot to take away from in this game. But like I opened this episode with, it feels good to be a Knight right now. I think that's the takeaway from this game.
Start 3-0. You had no business being 3-0 midway through the third, and the team gutted it out. Like you said, we're going to look at all the negatives. That's what I'm sure Nick, when he comes on, will talk negatives this upcoming week as we kind of look over the last 3 weeks and look ahead. But I said it before, I'll say it again, this UCF team, if this would have been a game last year, it would have been a loss. And for them to come back in Fort Worth, tough environment, credit to the TCU crowd. Again, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk negatively on the TCU crowd. In the lead up, all I've heard from all Big 12 people is how it's not that big of an environment or great of an environment. They came out today, so credit TCU and the team. They're going to be hard. They're going to be hard out. I mean, the negative for them is their running game, but boy, if you can't stop their passing attack, you're going to have a long, long game.
Yeah, let me tell you, Hoover's a sophomore. Hoover's going to remember. I don't know what the conference schedule is over the next couple of years, if we're going to see TCU again.
I'm going to look it up right now, actually.
In 25 or 26. Hoover's going to remember this game.
Oh.
That kid is good already. He's confident already. A great head on his shoulders, a good leader of the team, already a captain as a sophomore. He is going to remember that game. That's going to be, if TCU sees UCF on the schedule down the line with the players from this game, that's going to be circled as one of the biggest games of the season.
Well, we don't see him until 2026 in Orlando. So luckily we get a year break from Mr. Hoover. I don't need to see him throwing another 400 yards on our DBs again. But what a win. What a game. Feels good to be 3-0. Feels good. Now we can go into the bye week with some relaxation a little bit. Not for the players. We get a little bit of relaxing. We don't have to worry about the stress of a game week. But the players have a lot to clean up on before they face Colorado in a couple weeks. Tyler, thank you for coming on. You pinched hit perfectly. And you're going to be on a lot more. I'm going to make it a point to get you on a lot more. But because as always, you were great.
Well, thank you. And yeah, some technical difficulties on my end tonight. Just a couple of curveballs thrown our way. But it's football season when we're on a call until 2 a.m. in the morning. This is what we live for. This is why we love college football.
2 a.m. and going to go edit this and post it for you guys to watch it. So thank you as always for tuning in to Charge On. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Again, want to thank everybody for tuning on to the live watch along. That was really fun. It was the biggest one we've done did a lot last year, so this one being the first one we did this season, being at the biggest, can't thank you guys enough. So make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share, do all that you do for all the latest stuff that we release. Quick announcement, like I said, we're going to be doing a pod this week. That'll be dropping on Friday with me and Nick going over the Big 12 at large, what UCF needs to do moving forward. We're also going to be doing our Charge on Bye Week show on Saturday. So that'll be live stream on Saturday at 8 p.m. So definitely come check that out. We'll be going over all the Big 12 scores and looking at UCF future opponents and all that. So make sure you tune into that as well. All right, everybody, UCF is 3-0 heading into the bye week. Thank you so much for tuning on. This has been Charge On, presented by Bet Online. We will see you next week.